Funerals are supposed to be somber, respectful farewells. But hand a microphone to a narcissist or invite that one unhinged uncle, and it instantly becomes a psychological horror show. From open casket grave robberies to inappropriate Tinder dates, people have zero shame. We found the absolute dumbest, most disrespectful funeral moments in human history. 1. Public speaking is already a nightmare, but stepping up to the pulpit to accidentally nuke a grieving widow's reality is a special kind of talent. A guy tried to lighten the mood with a hilarious anecdote about the deceased's wild weekend trip to Vegas. The only problem? His wife was absolutely certain he was at a boring sales conference in Ohio. The silence that fell over that room was undeniably heavier than the mahogany casket. You could actually pinpoint the exact millisecond her sorrow mutated into pure, unfiltered rage. Pro tip for amateur comedians: some secrets absolutely belong 6 feet under. 2. Butchering a difficult last name is one thing, but standing at the altar reading an entirely different human being's obituary is pure psychological torture. Picture a solemn priest spending 10 agonizing minutes waxing poetic about a sweet, elderly grandmother who loved knitting. Meanwhile, the family's sitting in the front row, staring at the casket of a 20-year-old dude who practically lived on energy drinks and video games. The absolute worst part? Nobody had the spine to interrupt. They just sat in a state of sheer paralysis, letting this man eulogize a phantom baker. 3. Grief makes humans do deeply bizarre things, but playing amateur mortician during an open casket viewing crosses a massive, terrifying boundary. One fiercely critical aunt actually leaned right into the box to aggressively adjust the deceased's tie because it looked a little crooked to her discerning eye. During this unhinged wardrobe fix, she completely smeared the professional makeup job on his pale face. She was literally treating a dead relative like a runway model who needed a quick touch-up before a fashion shoot. Unless you carry a bottle of formaldehyde in your purse, keep your hands to yourself. 4. Leaving your neurotic chihuahua at home is just basic human decency, unless the animal is a highly trained medical service dog. Yet one guest felt the overwhelming need to bring their so-called emotional support pet to a deeply somber service. Predictably, the tiny beast completely lost its mind, aggressively barking at the priest every single time the poor man opened his mouth to pray. What was supposed to be a quiet, respectful farewell instantly morphed into a chaotic trip to a discount petting zoo. And because everyone was too polite, they just endured an hour of high-pitched yapping. 5. Using a funeral reception as your personal romantic hunting ground is straight-up demonic behavior. There is always that one excessively confident guy who slides up to the buffet table, hands the grieving widow a lukewarm cup of cheap wine, and smoothly whispers to ask if she is officially back on the dating market. Her mascara is literally still wet from crying over her dead husband, and this absolute vulture is trying to line up a steak dinner for Friday night. Treating the darkest day of a woman's life like a speed dating event requires a staggering level of sociopathy. 6. Have you ever met a guy who honestly believes he is the main character of the entire universe? Unfortunately, that guy sometimes gets handed a microphone. One attendee treated his emotional eulogy like a live taping of his own narcissistic podcast. Instead of sharing fond memories of the guy in the box, he launched into a 30-minute monologue detailing his recent messy divorce and his brand new CrossFit routine. He mentioned the deceased exactly 0 times. Hijacking a memorial service to force a captive, weeping audience to listen to your personal diary entries is pure, unfiltered delusion. 7. Hosting a gender reveal party literally right next to an open grave is psychotic on a cellular level. A heavily pregnant cousin genuinely thought it would be a beautiful tribute to pop a massive black balloon, showering the grieving family and the freshly dug dirt with bright pink confetti. She actually screamed out that she was having a baby girl, while the widow was 3 feet away, actively hyperventilating from sorrow. Forcing your loud, glittery celebration of new life into a moment of devastating finality is not poetic in the slightest. It just means you desperately need professional therapy. 8. Hustle culture has officially poisoned our collective brains. Using a corpse for corporate networking is a brand new flavor of terrible. A distant relative was caught red-handed, slipping her shiny real estate business cards directly into the pocket of the deceased's suit jacket. Her logic? She figured she should leave it just in case anyone checking the body might be looking to buy a 3-bedroom condo in the suburbs. She was aggressively pitching open houses to the undertaker. Viewing a coffin as premium advertising space is both terrifying and deeply hilarious in the darkest way possible. 9. Standing next to a floral wreath is absolutely not the right venue for an unsolicited dietary lecture. One fiercely opinionated relative took the podium and loudly declared that if the deceased had just listened to her advice about switching to a strict vegan diet, he would not be in this situation. Seriously. You are actually using your eulogy time to victim blame a dead guy for his own demise, just so you can feel morally superior about eating raw kale. Looking down at a heartbroken family to drop an "I told you so" is the ultimate unhinged power move. 10. Historic cemeteries can be strangely beautiful places, but they are absolutely not substitute playgrounds for unparented children. It is wildly infuriating to watch bored kids playing a loud game of hide-and-seek, ducking behind ancient marble tombstones while their oblivious parents catch up on neighborhood gossip. They are literally vaulting over the final resting places of beloved grandparents like it is an obstacle course at an indoor trampoline park. If you cannot stop your offspring from using a sacred burial ground as their personal jungle gym, please do humanity a massive favor and hire a babysitter. 11. Physically mugging a corpse during a viewing is next-level insanity. I have heard stories about families tearing each other apart over a written will, but a grieving aunt was actually caught trying to forcefully slide a massive diamond ring off her dead sister's cold, stiff finger right there in the parlor. Her pathetic excuse was simply that the ring had been promised to her years ago. Attempting to commit blatant grave robbery in broad daylight while 20 weeping relatives watch you wrestle with a dead hand is a fantastic way to end up in handcuffs. 12. Bringing your partisan rage to a burial is deeply pathetic. One incredibly petty guest deliberately showed up to the service wearing a bright red political hat and a loud campaign shirt. His entire goal was to purposefully trigger the more liberal members of the grieving family and start a screaming match over tax policy right next to the brass urn. If you are so utterly consumed by political tribalism that you use a family tragedy as a walking billboard for your favorite politician, you fully deserve to be permanently banned from every future Thanksgiving dinner. 13. Treating a church pew like a movie theater seat is a literal crime against decency. In the middle of a tear-jerking eulogy, one grown man actually pulled a crinkly foil bag of potato chips out of his coat pocket and just started going to town. The aggressive sound of him loudly crunching on barbecue chips echoed through the silent, vaulted room like rapid gunfire. If your blood sugar is so incredibly fragile that you cannot survive a 45-minute mass without a savory snack, please just lock yourself in your car until the adults are done mourning. 14. Taking a respectful final photo is one thing, but treating an open casket like a VIP photo booth at a nightclub is completely deranged. One staggeringly clueless guest actually leaned over the embalmed body, threw up a massive thumbs up, and snapped a high-angle selfie with the flash on. He then immediately posted it to his Instagram story with a heavily filtered sepia tone. Forcing a dead guy to be an unwilling prop for your social media engagement is a spectacular way to let the world know you possess 0 brain cells. 15. Treating your chewing gum like an extreme sport during a moment of silence should be a federal offense. The wet, aggressive sound of someone violently smacking their lips and popping massive pink bubbles reverberates off the stone walls of a chapel like a cracking whip. It completely shatters any sense of peace or quiet reflection for everyone else in the room. If your oral fixation is so intense that you cannot spend a single hour without chewing like a farm animal, you probably lack the emotional maturity to attend a funeral in the first place. 16. Popping the question while standing on top of a freshly dug grave is a wildly unhinged romantic strategy. For some unfathomable reason, a few spectacularly clueless men have decided that a funeral is the ideal venue for a marriage proposal purely because the entire extended family is already gathered in one place. You are literally dropping to one knee in the dirt that was just excavated for poor grandma, all to save a little cash on booking a nice restaurant. This is a fast track to traumatizing your future bride and ensuring your wedding is permanently cursed. 17. Standing out in an open field during a summer graveside service is undeniably uncomfortable. But you have to remember you are not the one locked inside a wooden box. One incredibly entitled guest spent the entire final prayer dramatically fanning herself and whining loudly about how the humidity was ruining her expensive blowout. Complaining about a mild sunburn while an actual human being is being lowered into the dark earth forever shows a staggering lack of self-awareness. Nobody cares that you are sweating in your wool skirt right now, Brenda. Wipe your brow and pretend you have a soul. 18. Treating a somber burial site like a live LinkedIn networking event is ruthlessly cold. Imagine watching a corporate climber casually stroll up to his boss at a colleague's funeral and genuinely ask who is going to inherit the dead guy's premium corner office. The deceased's body hasn't even settled into the dirt yet, and this absolute shark is already mentally measuring the windows for his new imported drapes. It is a level of pure, unadulterated corporate savagery that makes you wonder if these people are actually human or just highly ambitious reptiles wearing expensive tailored suits. 19. Showing up to a somber service in a skin-tight, bright red cocktail dress is a blaring siren crying out for attention. One incredibly bitter ex-girlfriend strutted into the church looking like she was walking the red carpet at a Hollywood gala, clearly on a mission to completely upstage the grieving widow. It was a visual slap across the face to every single person in that room who was actually there to mourn. You are supposed to be paying your final respects to a lost soul, not auditioning for the next trashy reality television show about desperate homewreckers. 20. Professional floral arrangements cost an absolute fortune, but that does not magically transform them into a free souvenir buffet. Right after the burial concluded, a terribly thrifty neighbor was caught red-handed loading several massive, expensive wreaths into the trunk of her sedan. Her grand plan was to use them to decorate her own front porch for spring. Sneaking back to strip a freshly covered grave of its gorgeous bouquets just to save $40 on your home landscaping is a level of cheapness that borders on a psychological disorder. Enjoy your heavily haunted house, lady. 21. Rolling up to a reception with heavy-duty equipment turns taking a small plate of food into a professional heist. A distant, freeloading uncle actually brought a massive hard-shell cooler on wheels right into the church basement and began aggressively packing it with premium roast beef sandwiches and imported beers. He claimed it was just provisions for the long drive home, but he was literally stocking his personal refrigerator for the entire week on the dime of a devastated family. Treating a heartbreaking wake like a rowdy football tailgate party is the absolute pinnacle of garbage behavior. 22. Launching your personal stand-up comedy career during a eulogy is a spectacularly terrible idea. One aggressively arrogant guy marched up to the microphone and spent 30 uninterrupted minutes bragging about his recent corporate promotion, his lucrative stock portfolio, and the heated leather seats in his brand new sports car. He treated the deceased like a vague afterthought, barely mentioning his name before pivoting back to his own golf handicap. Hijacking a room full of emotional captives just to stroke your own massive ego should instantly result in a lifetime ban from ever holding a microphone again. 23. Screaming out in joy while staring at your phone during a burial is entirely unforgivable. We fully acknowledge that college football is practically a religion for some folks, but a guy standing in the back row completely forgot his grim surroundings. He violently pumped his fist and yelled out when his team scored a crucial touchdown right as the casket was being lowered into the ground. He frantically tried to disguise the outburst as a violent coughing fit, but the damage was already done. If you cannot detach from the fantasy league, go watch the game at a dive bar. 24. Interrupting a weeping family to demand the local Wi-Fi password proves that technology addiction has truly rotted our collective manners. Picture walking through the heavy wooden doors of a funeral parlor, seeing a mother sobbing over her profound loss, and tapping her on the shoulder to make sure you have enough bandwidth to check Instagram. People will genuinely bother a grieving widow just to avoid using up their cellular data plan. If you are physically incapable of surviving offline for 45 minutes, please just stay glued to your couch at home and send a digital sympathy card. 25. Shattering a sacred prayer with a heavy metal ringtone is the lowest possible bar for basic respect. Right in the middle of a tearful, deeply emotional tribute, a phone erupts from the third pew blasting loud music at maximum volume. But the sheer panic does not stop there. Instead of frantically smashing the power button, this absolute genius actually answers the call. He cups his hand to loudly whisper that he cannot talk right now because he is at a funeral. Just turn the radioactive brick off, buddy. Unless you are holding the nuclear launch codes, hang up. 26. Financial vultures circling the room looking for fresh meat while the body is still warm is a terrifying sight. I am talking about the kind of incredibly greedy niece who corners the estate lawyer by the guest book, asking in a booming voice exactly when the will is going to be read. The deceased hasn't even been properly lowered into the dirt yet, and she is already trying to mentally calculate the property taxes on her new vacation home. You are supposed to be mourning a lifetime of memories, not treating a corpse like a winning lottery ticket. 27. Directly comparing the catastrophic loss of a human spouse to a dead household pet is a colossal failure of social intelligence. One incredibly misguided woman tried to comfort a devastated widow by holding her hand and saying she knew the exact pain because her pet hamster passed away last Tuesday. Seriously? She equated 3 decades of profound marriage and raising a family to a tiny furry rodent that spent its brief life sprinting on a plastic wheel. It is the exact brand of mind-numbing, tone-deaf commentary that makes you want to permanently move to a deserted island. 28. Conducting a sterile annual performance review for a dead guy is weirdly dystopian and incredibly uncomfortable to witness. A former manager actually stepped up to the podium and began rattling off the deceased's past productivity levels, quarterly sales quotas, and perfect attendance record. He effectively reduced an entire, vibrant human life to a boring spreadsheet of raw corporate data. It was spectacularly cold, totally impersonal, and loudly proved to everyone in the room that he never actually knew a single real thing about the guy who spent 20 years working for him. 29. Dragging your 3 sugar-fueled toddlers to a memorial when the invitation explicitly printed adults only is a wildly arrogant move. These tiny terrors were literally sprinting under the folding tables, playing tag, and screaming at the top of their lungs while an uncle was trying to give a heartbreaking toast. The totally oblivious parents just casually sipped their drinks and chuckled about how kids will naturally be kids. No, ma'am, this is a somber reflection on human mortality, not a chaotic Tuesday afternoon at a noisy indoor ball pit. Hire a teenage babysitter or keep your circus at home. 30. Relying on liquid courage to get through a public speech is a massive gamble that almost always ends in a fiery disaster. A grieving best friend decided to slam 3 heavy shots of cheap whiskey before staggering up to the microphone. He then proceeded to slur his way through a highly inappropriate, deeply confusing story about a legendary bachelor party in Mexico that apparently involved stolen farm animals and the local police. The widow was frozen in absolute horror. The priest looked completely terrified, and the guy finally put everyone out of their misery by tripping backwards over a microphone cord. 31. Basic parenting instincts seem to entirely evaporate the moment people cross the threshold of a funeral home. You will constantly see unsupervised kids sprinting recklessly down the carpeted aisles, or sitting in the front row aggressively playing mindless iPad games with the volume cranked to maximum. The parents just sit there with a blank, peaceful smile like their child's digital slot machine. Noises are somehow adding to the peaceful ambiance. Let's be crystal clear here. This is a heavy, solemn ceremony honoring a lost life, not a cheap daycare center where you can just ignore your screaming offspring. 32. Aggressively recruiting a weeping widow into your shady multi-level marketing scam is a brand new depth of depravity. This poor woman literally needs a fresh box of tissues and a hug, not a violently expensive starter kit for your magical essential oil pyramid scheme. Deliberately using a community tragedy as an opportunity to desperately hit your monthly sales quota is genuinely disgusting. Hustling grieving families for $20 a bottle while they are picking out a casket is the kind of dark energy that absolutely guarantees you a VIP ticket straight to the fiery underworld. 33. Expanding your professional client roster during a shared mourning service is pure evil. One incredibly ruthless local real estate agent decided to treat the receiving line like a prime networking mixer. He literally went down the row of sobbing relatives, smoothly handing out glossy business cards and casually asking if anyone was planning to list the deceased's empty house on the market anytime soon. He was heavily pitching his commission rates before the expensive coffin even hit the bottom of the grave. American hustle culture has officially mutated into a terrifying disease that completely destroys basic human decency. 34. Live streaming an open casket directly to TikTok is definitive proof that society is rapidly crumbling into the ocean. One hopelessly brain-rotted teenager actually walked right up to the embalmed body with his phone out, narrating the grim scene like a professional lifestyle influencer. He genuinely asked his digital followers to smash that like button to show respect, while violently zooming in on the dead guy's powdered face. It is a bleak, dystopian nightmare scenario that proves an entire generation has completely lost their grip on reality just to chase a tiny hit of fleeting internet clout. 35. Loudly celebrating that a massive financial burden has been lifted off your shoulders over a fresh corpse is incredibly foul. During the open microphone portion of the memorial, one guy actually stood up, threw his hands in the air, and aggressively thanked the heavens that he no longer had to repay the $5,000 he borrowed from the deceased. He was literally doing a victory dance about his sudden influx of cash, while the dead man's daughters were openly weeping just 5 feet away. That specific flavor of pure, unadulterated greed absolutely guarantees a lifetime of terrible karma. 36. Attempting to settle a bitter score with a person who is entirely devoid of a pulse is a completely one-sided battle that just makes you look insane. A disgruntled neighbor stepped up to share a fond memory, but instead launched into a deeply unhinged, incredibly specific rant about a premium gas lawnmower the deceased borrowed and never returned way back in 2005. Holding on to a furious grudge over basic landscaping equipment for 15 long years is a terrifying level of petty. Letting a stolen mower consume your soul is completely wild behavior. 37. Weaponizing deep-seated family resentment while gripping a microphone next to a coffin is brutally savage. An estranged brother marched up to the front and flatly stated that the deceased was an absolute nightmare in life, and is probably down there aggressively arguing with the devil right this second. The collective, horrified gasp from the audience actually sucked all the breathable oxygen straight out of the room. We all value a bit of raw honesty, but there is a massive difference between keeping it real and just being a spectacularly cruel, comic book-level villain at a funeral. 38. Loudly complaining about the final price tag of the funeral to the exact person who just emptied their savings to pay for it is pure madness. A wildly insensitive distant cousin actually pulled the widow aside to inform her she got completely ripped off by the funeral director. He bragged that he could have easily scored a much cheaper, identical box over at Costco. The poor woman literally just buried the love of her life. She does not need your aggressive financial auditing or unsolicited coupon clipping strategies in this dark moment. Keep your bulk discount opinions firmly to yourself. 39. Modern technology has an incredible knack for ruining literally every peaceful moment on Earth. The deceased's personal smartphone was respectfully placed on a side table during the wake. Right in the middle of a heavy, pin-drop silence, the screen lit up with a bright notification. A text message aggressively popped up reading that they missed him so much from a mysterious number that absolutely, definitively did not belong to his grieving wife. That is literally a cheating husband managing to miraculously bust his own secret affair from completely beyond the grave. The silence was deafening. 40. A sprawling church parking lot is designed to hold the vehicles of mourning friends, not to serve as your personal, highly targeted used car dealership. I heard a ridiculous story about a guy who aggressively taped a neon sign into the back window of his beat-up pickup truck right before walking into the service. His genius logic was that a huge crowd of people would be slowly walking past it, so it was basically premium free advertising. Attempting to flip your rusty transmission to a crowd of weeping relatives is a masterclass in being utterly, hopelessly tacky. 41. Blatantly regifting cheap stationery at a tragic wake is incredibly insulting. A notoriously thrifty neighbor solemnly handed the devastated family a beautiful condolence card. The only major problem? When they opened it, they found a brightly colored happy birthday message with a different name, aggressively scribbled out in blue ink. She literally dragged a recycled card out of her junk drawer just to avoid spending $5 at the local pharmacy. That specific breed of lazy, unapologetic cheapness is a massive, slap-in-the-face insult to both the traumatized living and the freshly buried dead. 42. Trying to actively flirt and secure a dinner date while standing inches away from a mahogany casket is a level of biological thirst that modern science simply cannot explain. I actually witnessed a woman aggressively leaning over a floral arrangement to slip her phone number to the guy driving the hearse. Why? Simply because she thought he looked incredibly sharp in his tailored black suit. Professional funeral directors are highly trained to meticulously manage emotional crises, not to audition as your next romantic conquest. Please, for the love of everything decent, try to keep your chaotic romantic life out of the mortuary. 43. Acting like a ruthless mob enforcer over petty cash at a memorial is the exact definition of being utterly heartless. One aggressively persistent guest actually cornered the grieving daughter right next to the lukewarm punch bowl to fiercely demand the $20 bill her father had supposedly borrowed back in 1999. Seriously, you are shaking down a weeping woman for ancient pocket change while she is actively trying to pick out a granite headstone for her dad. We fully acknowledge debts exist, but maybe wait at least a week before breaking out the ledger, you absolute monster. 44. Grief supposedly brings out our best qualities, but for some, it just flips the switch on pure, unadulterated greed. Before the deceased was even transported to the graveyard, a so-called close buddy walked right up to the devastated widow and formally called dibs on the guy's expensive set of Callaway golf clubs. He literally asked for the garage code while she was aggressively blowing her nose into a tissue. Trying to loot a dead man's sporting goods before his body temperature even drops is the absolute pinnacle of trashy behavior. 45. Throwing a massive tantrum over the ingredients of a communion wafer during a Catholic funeral mass is absolutely unhinged. A high-maintenance guest actually stopped the sacred line to loudly complain to the priest that the body of Christ was not certified gluten-free, aggressively demanding a better dietary alternative. Listen up, you are at a somber religious burial ceremony, not a trendy, overpriced organic brunch spot in downtown Los Angeles. Managing personal dietary restrictions is totally valid in daily life, but right now, either swallow the tiny wafer without complaining or just quietly return to your wooden pew. 46. Brutal comedy roasts are fantastic for raucous retirement parties or late-night television, but they are a catastrophic choice for burying your own father. One wildly delusional son genuinely thought it would be absolutely hilarious to list out every single one of his dad's miserable business failures and terrible vintage haircuts during the main eulogy. He claimed he was doing it out of love, but every single punchline aggressively landed into a wall of deafening, horrified silence. There is a time for witty humor, but brutally mocking a dead man directly to his sobbing, elderly mother is definitely not it. 47. Getting a +1 invitation to any major event is a total privilege, not a constitutional right to bring a total weirdo. Deciding to bring a random last-minute date who has literally never met the deceased and shows up wearing dirty beach flip-flops is an incredibly bold, disrespectful move. They almost always just stand awkwardly in the corner, visibly bored out of their minds, loudly checking their smartwatch, and repeatedly asking anyone nearby when the catered food is finally coming out. Do everyone a massive favor and leave your random Thursday night hookup at home for the afternoon. 48. Music can be incredibly healing during times of profound loss, but forcing a captive audience to endure your terrible acoustic guitar solo is a human rights violation. One extremely delusional cousin brought his beat-up Fender to the church and launched into a highly unprompted, terribly out-of-tune original song about his own emotional struggles. It lasted 7 excruciating minutes. Everyone just sat trapped in the pews, intensely sweating, while this guy used a tragic family death as a live audition for a non-existent record label. 49. Loudly talking into your wrist like an off-duty secret agent is somehow infinitely worse than a ringing cell phone. One tech-obsessed guy was actually dictating a long, detailed text message directly into his glowing smartwatch, right in the middle of a designated moment of silence. The entire congregation could vividly hear him barking out, comma, period, send, no wait, delete, while a devastated priest was desperately trying to lead a prayer. It is a brand of futuristic, cybernetic tackiness that completely obliterates any shred of atmosphere in the room. Put the gadgets away for 5 minutes. 50. Managing logistics at a massive burial site is always a nightmare, but intentionally boxing in the hearse requires a special brand of aggressive stupidity. One wildly entitled guest driving a bright yellow sports car absolutely refused to park in the designated overflow grass area. Instead, he parked diagonally right behind the funeral director's vehicle, just so he wouldn't scuff his expensive Italian loafers in the dirt. He literally trapped the dead body at the church for 20 extra minutes because he went missing to grab a coffee. I genuinely want to know, which of your relatives is absolutely getting banned from your funeral? Don't hold back. Name the exact crime they'd commit in the comments right now. I read them all. If this video made you lose a little more faith in humanity, hit that subscribe button and leave a like so the algorithm knows you have excellent, slightly twisted taste.